I can see Thierry Coquil, he's joined us now. And you are Director of Maritime Affairs since April 2016. You work on the questions of safety and security, and that's the reason why we invited you today to present outlook for container shipping. You kindly accepted our invitation, and we thank you for that, to focus on this important question today. Within the French Ministry for the Sea, it's an issue, a current issue. So I'm going to pass over to Thierry Coquil for a 20-minute presentation about future outlooks for container shipping. So good morning to all. Many thanks for your invitation. Thank you to Stéphane Doll, Director of Cedre, and to Agnès Diverès for inviting me. Now, you asked me to approach the issue of future prospects for maritime container shipping. So I'm going to try and address that issue partly by questioning impacts of container shipping, and I will also be addressing the question of new regulations. So first of all, in terms of development perspectives, thinking about these, so before looking at future prospects for container shipping, it's worth having a little look into the past. Now, as you no doubt know, it's actually fairly recent development. In 1956, an American, Mr. McLean, had the idea of replacing boxes and bags by truck trailers. And then what developed from that was a company called Pan Atlantic developed this to be transported on ships. Now, the first ship, called Ideal X, carried containers, and then McLean quickly understood that the trucks themselves were unnecessary, and so quickly removed them in order to only transport the containers themselves. So the American Army, during the War of Vietnam, realized that this logistical issue was of importance. And so then there came this kind of battle to standardize the format of containers. And then there was a strike by dockers as they were against this new concept. So over a number of decades, the container shipping then grew exponentially to the current day. Currently, in Europe, there's a lack of containers, and you can see that the price of freight is just exploding. As today, containers are mainly in America and in Asia rather than Europe. Today, there are 25 million containers worldwide, representing about 180 million journeys a year. So to give you an idea, that's represents about 200 kilometers of lorries lined up. So, of course, today we find all sorts of goods and products, so finished products, intermediate products, and raw materials as well, including liquids. And increasingly, we find perishable goods in reefers, which are refrigerated containers. So each container is worth hundreds of millions of euros, this transport. in terms of transport. So what has this changed? Well, this standardization has industrialized and ensured the safety of this transport method and reduces the risk of damage. So yes, certainly it's a form of packaging, but it could be considered similar to email in the world of post. So it's an important object, even though it is simply a form of packaging. It's transformed work on the dock side, so it requires fewer dockers, less logistics. And so transport has moved on from coastal transport to worldwide transport with a reorganization of the economy and with delocalization and just-in-time logistics. So it's kind of an image of the hemoglobin of our transport industry and provides oxygen. In terms of volume, I would say, of course, it's going to continue to grow. In 2020, the growth was 2.9%. And if we look at orders for container ships over last year, about 100 new container ships were ordered. So that's a capacity of about 1 million. So of course it's going to keep growing. So perhaps the zones of trade will evolve internationally, but it will continue to grow because it's efficient in terms of energy. Maritime transport itself is energy efficient, and demand is still high in terms of development. Depending on each country, there are different levels of development, of course. There are still regions of the world like India, South America, Asia, which are going to develop further. So even if it's predictable that containers will continue to grow, and there will certainly be new initiatives such as carbon reduction and so on, the introduction of greater traceability and safety. But the problem, and there's also the issue of empty containers returning. In the current situation, these issues can become even more important, but no one could have predicted. No one would be likely to say that container shipping is not going to continue to grow further. So it's like the Internet of Things, and especially with 5G. So this incredible development, which is no doubt going to continue, let's investigate the problems that raises worldwide. Container ships, when they're efficient, there are three issues. So gigantism, so the increasing size of these giant ships. Secondly, the issue of the products inside the containers. And thirdly, the loss of containers. There are also additional issues outside of the maritime field. I won't go into the details of those. The question of industrial autonomy and the various industrial issues that I won't focus on here. Let's come back to the question of safety, the safety of containers at sea. So there is a complex operational chain involving weighing, loading, packing, in a way to prevent rolling. There's the question of loss and retrieval. So a whole series of techniques that must be mastered for this. So there are, of course, different ways of reducing losses. So in terms of loss of containers overboard, the worldwide numbers, we're talking about a few thousand, maybe up to 10,000, but we don't actually have reliable statistics for that. But of course, we can say it's too many. I'll come back to the impacts, but it's fairly modest if we look at it compared to the number of containers transported. So it's perhaps something like 0.005% of all containers transported that are lost overboard. Ship owners have the duty to retrieve containers that are lost overboard. And so if these containers create a hazard, so the situation means that they don't necessarily feel obliged to declare these lost containers and retrieve them, the cost of which can be claimed by the state. There's a coalition of 17 ship owners that have created a notification system called SysNet that you'll find on the internet. They collect information on lost containers and provide information about proper loading. And misdeclaration is one of the main reasons for the loss of containers, and poor packing of containers. So this initiative is very positive, and I hope you will find out more about it. Loss of containers has ecological and economic impacts. It has economic impacts in terms of insurance, in terms of tourism, in terms of fishing. It also raises questions in relation to maritime safety. So it's a very serious issue. So should new regulations be introduced? As far as we are concerned, the answer is yes, especially in terms of firefighting. This is a serious issue, and given the size of these vessels and the small crew that have to deal with, if a fire occurs, they have to deal with the situation. So there's currently work going on at IMO, and France is contributing to this work, and especially at European scale, to contribute to the Fire Safe 1 and 2 studies. In terms of fire risks, yes, I would say that this is important, and it's important that we continue to work on this issue urgently. It's a complex issue because there are multiple causes. My second focus, which was the gigantic size of container ships. This, I may say, doesn't only concern container ships. It raises issues of salvage, also the size of port facilities and capacities. So with these gigantic ships, there is a question of logistical concentration. And the question of the movement of goods. So large ships will stop off in fewer ports, but will require greater logistics. So these ports will require larger ports with larger facilities. In France, we're working on the question of the limits that would be reasonable for these vessels. In November 2021, during the meeting of the IMO Safety Committee, we will be presenting on this subject. In the meantime, at the next committee meeting in April, we will be putting forward a proposal in relation to the towing of very large vessels in a bid to put forward solutions, in particular when there are ships in rough sea conditions, when such vessels need towed. To come back to our issue of containers lost overboard, it's important, of course, for us to act, although I would like to highlight the fact that we've already made certain efforts. In 2014, the SOLAS Convention was amended to introduce a verified gross mass of containers. That was an initial step, and it seems particularly important to us. It relates to the loading of containers onto ships. If you have a look on the internet, you've probably already done this. You will find out that the number of containers lost and the number of maritime casualties is very high and continues to evolve. So for France, we believe that we must continue to highlight these issues in international committees. We aim to put forward a proposal to IMO relating to containers lost overboard. Unfortunately, the European coordination raised some problems, and so this hasn't been completely developed yet. The MSC, Maritime Safety Committee, during the meeting, the agenda was extremely dense given the COVID health situation. So this proposal couldn't be addressed. So at the next MSC meeting, we plan to take up this issue again. There will be proposals in relation to lost containers and also relating to firefighting on board container ships. So what I would like to say is that we plan to work on this issue together with IMO.
L'inscription, effectivement, qu'on ait un minima, pardon.
We would like there to be a systematic declaration when a container is lost overboard, and tracking systems with buoys. We would like such systems to be implemented for every vessel that loses containers. The purpose of this would be to retrieve these containers if there is a safety hazard generated by these containers. There may be questions that would give us the opportunity to go into further detail on each of these points. But as I've been saying, these various issues, the gigantism and firefighting are important issues that we're working on with IMO. back to you,
Je vous rends
Nicolas.
la parole.